Brothers Home was supposed to be a safe place. It opened in 1960 in Busan, South Korea, as an orphanage called Brothers Orphanage. People believed it would be a haven for children who needed help. However, as time went on, it became a much darker place. In the 1970s, the government started sending people they called vagrants to Brothers Home. These were people they thought were homeless or troublemakers. The government paid Brothers Home to keep these people hidden away. But the people sent to Brothers Home weren't always who the government said they were. Many were just poor, disabled, or struggling to get by. Some were even children who had run away from home or gotten lost. Brothers Home was supposed to help people, but it became a place of fear and sadness. The people sent there had no choice and no one to speak up for them. They were trapped in a system that treated them like prisoners instead of human beings. In the 1980s, South Korea was getting ready to host two big events, the 1986 Asian Games and the 1988 Seoul Olympics. They wanted to show the world that South Korea was a modern and successful country. To do this, they decided to clean up the streets. This meant removing anyone they thought would make them look bad. Homeless people, beggars, and anyone who caused trouble were targeted. The government wanted to hide these people away. Brothers Home became a big part of this plan. The government sent more and more people there, often for no good reason. The facility was too crowded, and there weren't enough people to take care of everyone. The government's desire for a perfect image had a dark side. It caused many innocent people to suffer. The push for progress came at a terrible human cost. Imagine walking down the street, minding your own business, and suddenly being grabbed and thrown into a van. This is what happened to many people who ended up in Brothers Home. They were taken from their lives without any warning or explanation. The police and Brothers Home workers had to bring in a certain number of people. They snatched people from the streets, bus stations, and even their homes. They didn't care who they took or what their story was. Children were especially at risk. Some were orphans or runaways living on the streets. Others were simply separated from their parents in busy places. Once they were inside Brothers Home, it was almost impossible to escape. These scary abductions made people very afraid because they never knew who would be taken next. The government didn't say anything about it, which made things even scarier. Life inside Brothers Home was a nightmare. People were forced to work long hours in terrible conditions. They made clothes, fished, and did other hard labor. The work was exhausting and often dangerous. The people working there were paid little to nothing. They worked until they were too tired to stand. Those who couldn't work were beaten and starved. Sickness spread quickly because it was dirty, and there was no medical care. The guards at Brothers Home were incredibly cruel. They beat and tortured people for even the smallest reason. People were chained up, beaten with pipes, and even sexually assaulted. Brothers Home was supposed to be a place where people could get better, but it was just a forced labor camp. People were treated like slaves, and their lives were seen as worthless. Section 5. A living nightmare. Survivors of Brothers Home say it was like living in hell. They saw terrible things happen. People were beaten to death right in front of them. The screams of those being tortured could be heard throughout the building. Food was scarce and often rotten. People were so hungry that they started eating rats and insects just to survive. Clean water was a luxury that few could get. Many people lost their minds because of the abuse and terrible conditions. They lost all hope and went crazy. The trauma and emotional pain from their time in Brothers Home would stay with them forever. Brothers Home was a place where hope went to die. It showed the terrible cruelty that humans are capable of. Section 6. Buried secrets, unanswered questions. Brothers Home was kept secret for decades. The government denied doing anything wrong, and the media didn't say anything about it. It wasn't until 1987 when a prosecutor raided the facility that the truth started to come out. The raid revealed the shocking level of abuse and neglect. It uncovered mass graves with the bodies of hundreds of people who had died there. The world was horrified by what they saw. Even with the evidence, justice has been slow and incomplete. Many people who committed these crimes have never been punished. Survivors have received very little compensation or support. The full story of Brothers Home is still being uncovered. Many questions remain unanswered. The fight for truth and justice continues. Section 7. Echoes of Squid Game. The horrors of Brothers Home are very similar to the popular Netflix show Squid Game. While Squid Game is fictional, it shows real-world anxieties about social inequality and the abuse of power. Both Brothers Home and Squid Game show desperate people forced to compete in dangerous games. In both cases, it's a matter of life or death. The powerful elite manipulate and use vulnerable people for their own gain. The similarities between the real-life horrors of Brothers Home and the fictional world of Squid Game highlight the dark side of human nature. They remind us that even in the 21st century, exploitation and cruelty can still happen in secret. Section 8. The real cost of silence. The tragedy of Brothers Home is a powerful reminder of how important it is to speak out against injustice. For too long, the government and the media ignored the suffering that was happening. Staying silent only makes perpetrators more confident and allows abuse to continue. It is our duty to bring attention to human rights violations and hold those in power accountable for their actions. Remembering and learning from the past is essential to preventing future atrocities. We must never forget the victims of Brothers Home and fight to ensure that such horrors never happen again. Section 9. Remembering Brothers Home. Today, there is a memorial where Brothers Home used to be. It serves as a reminder of the suffering that took place there and the importance of human rights. The survivors of Brothers Home continue to live with the physical and emotional scars of their experience. Many still struggle to cope with the trauma they endured. It is our responsibility to listen to their stories, honor their resilience, and demand justice for the crimes committed against them. Only then can we begin to heal the wounds of the past and create a more just and compassionate future.